Welcome to the Boneyard with Steve Robertson. As always, I am your good friend and host, Steve Robertson. I want to apologize you guys about a midweek show, but I just haven't felt well the last few days. And just to give you a little backstory, I have to take meds, nothing like narcotic or, anything, mental or anything like that. But there's some meds I have to take just to kind of keep your boy in the game. And with all the travel and everything that's going on, I didn't realize that I'd run out of refills. I mean, you know how that happens. I get them quarterly, and you get the little text message and say, yeah. And all of a sudden, I get home, and I don't have any more medication. And so, yeah, it's been a bit of a deal getting it taken care of. But we got it handled. And so I'm back on my meds, which may be a good thing or a bad thing, we'll see. But I'm starting to feel better, so I wanted to get you a show, even though it's a late Friday show. I know you guys miss me because I got a bunch of messages, and thank you so much for those. But, yeah, it's been a difficult week. We had technical difficulties, and it's like, okay, we'll come back and get on schedule on Wednesday. And, man, on Wednesday, I just was so incredibly unmotivated. I just absolutely could not focus on anything. And even now, this is a bit of a chore, so I don't know if we'll go the full 90. Because I was without this med, it was giving me headaches and very sensitive to light, not necessarily a migraine, but a headache. And so sitting in front of the computer for an extended period of time is difficult. It's difficult. And so I may have to record this in segments where I record for a while, take a break, come back, after my mind has rested a little bit, because my eyes get real sensitive. So all that understood, I apologize, and I owed you an explanation. So here we are with that. It's so funny. Didn't do the Wednesday show, and so we didn't do it Thursday, and then I had people hitting me up today, dude, Steve, you okay? So I had to go make a statement over at Gene's page. I don't think I'm quite that important, but you guys have learned to rely on me, and you guys know that I rarely ever miss 3 shows in a week. And so I think goodness, man, how long have I been doing this, man? What is this? Maybe you're 17, maybe? Maybe. But it's been a long time. But yeah, it's since I moved to Stark 114, it's been 3 shows a week, with rare exception. And so, again, I wanted to kind of explain. I don't want you guys to think that I was asleep at the wheel. And this is like one of the worst times. And there's never really a great time to have some type of medical issue, ever. But when you're in our line of work, there's always something. Maybe July is like the only time you could afford to take some downtime, because we're right in the middle of the portal. And things have been raging this week, and I've had to depend on my staff to handle some of that. I've done the best I could. But let's just kind of jump into that. So let's thank our friends at Bulldog Burger Company, longtime sponsors of this show, and man, we appreciate them so much. Man, what a value they are to our community, right? It's not just the fact that I can go in there and have a great meal at a great price, great ambiance, great service. It's the things they do in our community. The Eat With Us group has been so incredible to the Golden Triangle area. It's been amazing. And now Bulldog Burger Company in 3 great locations: University Drive in Stark Vegas, Gloucester Street there in Tupelo, Lake Harbor Drive in the Ridge and Flowwood area. Have the spring rolls as your appetizer. They'll make you better looking. When I go eat at Bulldog Burger Company, and I did earlier this week, and the comeback burger is now on the menu full time, in case you didn't know. They ran it as a special for a while. It's great. Great. And I had to explain to this young lady, do you see this right here? Oh, I never knew that. Well, yeah, this is me. So my hypocrisy knows no bounds, right? But anyway, it was so great to go in there and eat, and we ate with a buddy and his son, and we had a good time. It's always a good time when I go to Bulldog Burger Company. It is. It's always a good time. It'll be a good time for you too. Find your own favorites. Again, the comeback burger is back. I'm typically, like, if somebody says, hey, we're getting Bulldog Burger Company today, well, get me the pimentology add bacon. That'll put some hair on your chest. But find your own favorites. The Lauren, the Bryant, the Bulldog itself. Maybe you're feeling like a salad. You get that great BLT salad. I like it grilled. You may prefer it fried. It makes no difference to me. But no matter what you're doing, make sure you're shopping and eating local. And that's a great thing with the Eat With Us group, is we get a little local flair. But, man, it feels so big time going in there, right? Get that chocolate shake to go. You can ride that ride home with a smile. Bulldog Burger Company, the place where people go to meet. MEAT. Okay, this number will change on Saturday. I'm recording this Friday night. There will be more on Saturday. Things are really kind of clicking along here. So let's take an inventory. Let's start, I guess, I'm sure that we don't have all of these up to date. But I want to run through some of these that are outgoing Bulldogs that have announced their decision. And there's a bunch of those guys, right? Right now there's 34 outgoing transfers. So we'll start at the bottom. Stonka Burnside, local kid, Starkville High School. We love Miss Sandra. We always will. Well, Braille and Stonka Burnside's headed to Memphis. I think that's great for him because he wants to play wide receiver. And I think he can at that level. I think he can play at this level. I think the decision to move him to defense was probably a bad one. But I'm not at practice every day. And neither of these people out there are supporting that decision, right? It's important to understand. But we wish Stonka the best. Alex Lopez, we talked about him. He's headed to Western Kentucky. I've heard that Tony Mitchell is having like a little buyer's remorse, and I expected that to be the case. You know, that he wanted a substantial raise in rev share, and he's a guy that didn't play a whole lot, and actually he's up to like 250 pounds. And so, not that couldn't be corrected, but I hear that Tony Mitchell might want to come back. I just don't know if there's a spot for him anymore. Jerron Glover, we've talked about him, headed to South Florida. There's been some new ones since then. Luke Kromenhoek, quarterback, headed to South Florida too. And what a great deal that Luke got, right? Luke became a part-time starter as a freshman at Florida State, comes to Mississippi State, makes some money, gets his redshirt year back, and he's right back in the flood again. You know, we didn't get much from that, right? And that's not being critical of Luke, right? Luke wanted to get the redshirt year back, and maybe Luke didn't realize what Camario was going to be. So I got no beef with Luke Kromenhoek at all. But I just think this is just kind of the economics of the portal sometimes that don't make a lot of sense for the school itself. Is we paid this guy pretty big money to come here, and then he only plays, in a handful of games and then the bowl game. And thank God we had him in the bowl game even though we didn't win. But it worked out really well for Luke. And I suspect Luke will talk highly of his experience at Mississippi State. I had multiple people tell me, man, if the kid didn't have Camario here, he would absolutely stay. He had a great experience here. All right, Elijah Cannon. It's interesting, some of our fans, we got a lot of walk-on experts. And that's one thing. That's not to say you can't have an opinion as a fan. We got a lot of people out there, though, that they say, hey, listen to me. So Elijah Cannon, remember him? Elijah Cannon came to Mississippi State with Corey Bell. He was committed to FAU. He comes here. Elijah Cannon's headed to Kansas now. So he's going to stay in the Power Four. No, Kansas is not necessarily a powerhouse, even though Leopold's done some great things there. But Elijah Cannon stayed in the Power Four. Luke Work, I hoped that we would reconsider here. Luke Work, it's so funny. And funny in a ha-ha way, not in a strange way. I'm a Luke Work fan. I'm a Julie Bishop fan, right? I'm a David Work fan. But that does not impede my ability to be objective about one Luke Work. Luke got moved around a little bit, entered the season, injured, to new offensive line coach. I think we punted a little bit too early. And so many of you were out there with your memes, trying to be cute, forgetting the fact that Luke Work comes from a Mississippi State family. And all that stuff was crossing their timelines. You're like, Steve, come on. Guys, when you're out there saying the guy's going to go to Delta State, all due respect to the statesman, that's so incredibly disrespectful to a young man who dreamed of playing at Mississippi State and for 2 years gave you all that he had, and then ultimately got into a scenario where he felt, you know what, maybe I need to go somewhere else. Maybe I need to bypass on my dream to go ensure that I get on the field somewhere and get my education. And we got to tweet out Luke Works transferring to Delta State. Sometimes getting the laugh is not worth the price of losing some character. This is a Mississippi State family through and through. And so I don't support any of that. As a matter of fact, I condemn it. I really do. I really, really do. These are young people just trying to navigate their way through a very difficult and complicated process. And it's not like we at Mississippi State have given a lot of people reasons to stay. And this is a dyed-in-the-wool bulldog that's leaving us. And so I don't support jokes being made at his expense. Because I love David Work and I love Julie Bishop. I do. And I love Ken. I love that whole family. And I think it's wrong. I think it's wrong. I don't think it's wrong. I know it's wrong. I know it's wrong. But much to the chagrin of the Delta Statesman social media team, Luke Work had visits lined up to Missouri, Oklahoma, and South Carolina. So he was going to stay in the Southeastern Conference whether he stayed here or not. How does that make you feel? You ever Googled yourself? You may be alarmed to note exactly how much of your private information and data is out there for anybody to access. Whether it be your phone number, your home address, or details about your family. It could be your kids' names, their ages. Whether you agree to this disclosure or not. And that's because data brokers are collecting and selling your information to marketers, scammers, and basically anyone willing to pay. It's the reason robocallers know your name, and while ads seem to follow you on every digital platform out there. Well, Aura fights back for you. They remove your personal data from broker sites and keep it off. Aura also alerts you fast if your information shows up in a data breach or on the dark web. But Aura is more than just data broker removal. It's a full digital security suite that protects every part of your life online. Aura gives you a VPN to stay private, antivirus to block threats, a password manager to keep all your logins safe. They even give you spam call protection to cut off those stupid scammers. Aura also scans the dark web regularly for your most sensitive information like your social security number, bank logins, passwords, and they will notify you instantly if you are somehow exposed. If your identity is ever stolen, you're backed up by up to $5 million in insurance and 24/7 U.S.-based fraud support to help you recover everything quickly. Other services charge about the same, but they only cover one or two areas. With Aura, you get it all. Data broker removal, credit and identity monitoring, device protection, and fraud support, all with one simple app. Aura removes what is already exposed, protects what isn't, and puts you back in control. Right now, you can try Aura free for 14 days when you visit aura.com/remove. That gives them plenty of time to go ahead and start protecting your data. They can remove your personal information from data broker sites. Sign up today at aura.com/remove and get the peace of mind that your privacy, identity, and finances are all safeguarded. That's Aura, AURA.com/remove. Certain terms and conditions apply. Be sure and check it out today at aura.com. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. A lot of people are going to be talking about a new year means a new you. Well, that's not necessarily the case. How about a less burden you? Therapy can help more easily identify what weighs you down and holds you back by offering a very unbiased perspective to better understand your relationships, your motivations, and your emotions. I'm a person that absolutely believes in therapy. I think everybody needs someone they can tell everything to. Perhaps you're in that situation too. We're going to ask you to give our friends at BetterHelp an opportunity to help you deal with the triggers in life and the hang-ups, the heartbreaks. BetterHelp makes it easy to get matched online with a qualified therapist. Sign up today and get 10% off at betterhelp.com. That's better, HELP.com. It doesn't have to be this way. It could be a better version of yourself and a better version of life. Visit betterhelp.com today. Well, he's headed to Missouri now. Yeah, headed to Missouri. Kobe Keenum, transferred into us, from Kentucky. Played a little bit, just not very substantial. And he's listed at 6'4". If he's 6'4", I'm 6'5". And I'm not 6'5". He's headed to Memphis, and that's probably a level that he can play. And then, of course, recently we We've had some other guys go in since we visited. Montrell Chapman's the guy that went in earlier this week. Kendrick Bingley Jones is going in, and I think he's probably got to get a case to get a waiver. Javen Williams, kind of similar situation. DK Magruder, remember him? Yeah, DK, we barely knew you. DK transferred in. I think the last portal spot for the spring. So he will be the trivia question, the answer to that question. Who was the last ever spring portal commitment from Mississippi State? Was DK Magruder. And of course, a guy getting here that late, it's going to be difficult to get on the field. And he didn't. And now he's gone. Kai McClendon, now headed to Washington. Listed at 6'2", closer to 6 foot. Appreciate Kai and his contributions to Mississippi State. And had his ACL not been snapped back in the spring, he's probably a rotation guy for us this year. And I would say probably stay here. But the ACL injury, I think, changes the dynamic a little bit. And we're trying to get bigger and beefier up front. And so Kai now headed to the University of Washington. There we go. All right, let me get you caught up on your dozen Mississippi State transfers. And there's been a little drama tonight with one of them. We'll start with the newest one, Gus Cordova, an edge out of USC. And that's one of the things, too, that I don't want to hear any complaining about. Is, Steve, we're not getting any Power 5 guys. Well, we are. And then we get Power 5 guys who don't have a ton of production. Well, why aren't we getting those guys? Well, baby steps, kids. Baby steps. So Gus Cordova, a guy from Lake Travis, Texas. And anytime that I hear Texas, I figure this has got to be somebody in the Jeff Lebby tree. His dad obviously was a coach. Father-in-law, obviously a coach. But Gus Cordova was at USC this year. Played a little bit. Looks like he preserved the redshirt year. And that's one of the reasons I think there's probably got to be a relationship of sorts, because when you have a guy like that maybe wasn't highly recruited but still landed at a great place like USC, doesn't do a lot as a freshman, there's got to be somebody to vouch for that guy. And that's one of the reasons I think this is probably a Levy thing. We talked last week about Quentin Taylor, A.J. Swan. Mario Nash jumps in the boat earlier. And then Mario that gets out Matt Moscona. Matt's a guy that I know and respect. Matt puts out that Mario Nash is visiting OSU, and I like that didn't make any sense if he signed an FAA. Well, turns out he didn't sign an FAA. And there's some people in his corner that were like, hey, we could probably get more money. So he commits to us, and then people in his life keep shopping. Then Mario tweets out tonight, I am 100% committed to Mississippi State. Well, we don't want the commitment. We want the signing. So hopefully that all gets resolved. I will tell you this. It's not a good look, right? Mario is the one that picks up the tab. And it's not Mario, I think, it's making these decisions. I think it's people around him. I don't know their motivation. But, we had that whole deal before. He was committed to Mississippi State, came to camps all those years. Everything was great. And what does he do? Flips to Florida State. And I don't think that was 100% his decision. Gets out there in the portal. What's he do? Immediately jumps on the Mississippi State offer. And now that it's time to sign, hey, let's keep looking. I don't think it's the kid. Okay, and I'm going to be honest about that. The kid's the one that picks up the tab on it, but I don't think it's the kid. Maybe it works out, maybe it doesn't. I don't think Mario is a starter next year anyway. I think at best he's probably a 2 deeper at guard or center, and might not even be on a 2 deep next year, which is one of the reasons you don't make a big investment this year. Caleb Singleton transfers in from Syracuse, another cornerback prospect. We kind of discussed some of that. Then we had Jamrock Grimsley from Florida. That cornerback room looks completely different. Like for all of you that complained about Diego Brumfield, who played really hard for us. But it's math, not magic, right? I mean, you got a 6'5" receiver out there against a guy that's 5'10", 5'11". The catch radius, the reach, the length, it's a problem. But it looks a little different now, right? Jamrock Grimsley, 6'2", 198-pound guy coming in from Florida. And then Jason Jenkins, Talked about him earlier in the process, the edge. Marquise Johnson, you know about him. And then one of today's commitments too, L.J. Prudhomme, the offensive lineman from Captain Shreve High School. And we thought we had a good chance to get him out of high school, and then we ultimately lose the battle to Arkansas. Well, Arkansas folks were kind of projecting LJ to be a starter in 2026. And so now this is a young man coming back to Mississippi State, a guy that's very familiar with us, even though he elected to go play against us. I think that could be a guy that you certainly need to watch in spring practice. One of those guard spots, certainly. And there's Marcus Williams, a transfer from Rice as safety. And you look at his film, man, I think you're going to be impressed. Kid's really athletic, and of course Ty Warren making the move from Rice to Mississippi State as well. That made the move a little bit easier for Marcus. But Marcus, a guy, a product of Hoover High School, right? So it all kind of worked good for him. I get in the SEC, I'm 2 hours from home, and there's Coach Warren, a guy that I know, even though he's not my position coach. It's a familiar face. And it was nice talking to him. So you got 12 right now, but there's just so much more that's kind of happening. You know, Amari Williams, an edge from Florida State. He's a guy that could play tight end or edge. We see him as an edge. We need him as an edge. We need some tight ends too. But Amari is going to be a really good edge. 6'4", 240 type pounds, great body style for this particular position group. And let's kind of be honest too, we kind of piecemealed it together last year outside, right? We did. I mean, like we had some kids go out there and play really hard for us, and we're grateful for that. But we didn't have the most talented guys on the edge. Another Florida State Seminole coming in, and there are 4 at this point. Is it 4 or 5? I got to go count. But Jalen Matthews, an offensive tackle, 6'6", 350 pounds, transferred like from Rutgers down there. He is a native of New Jersey. There are some people early on that said this guy is a pro. 6'6", 350. But he's transferred 3 times in 13 months. Hopefully he'll fall in love and stay here. But again, kind of running it back here, you got, let me see here. What we got here? Yeah, Arkansas. So, all right, Florida State 1, Florida State 2, Florida State 3, Florida State 4. So we have 4 currently transferring in from Florida State. Then you got Rice, obviously, Arkansas, Missouri, Florida, Syracuse, Appalachian State, Iowa State, USC. So of your 12 incoming transfers, 10 of them coming in from Power 4 conferences. And people like that label. You know, it's one of the things I've discussed with some people around the SEC. People say, you know, Steve, it's like our kids are hunted. You know, these agents are like, hey, you're an SEC guy, and because you have that SEC logo on you, there's going to be more value for you in the portal. And so we have to contend with that all the time. Not just Mississippi State, but people around the country would love to have an SEC guy. And so there's a lot of people that are involved in it. And they say, well, Steve, it's not tampering. It is in the most technical sense of the word, because you're basically going through a third party and providing an incentive for someone to enter the transfer portal process. And so, yeah, you say, well, Steve, everybody has agents. Yeah, that's true. That's why we need parameters around agents. Some truth in that. But that's where we stand. And, of course, a lot of progress, you know, since we spoke on Tuesday. But, again, I'm expecting some more on Saturday. And there's doing our best to kind of keep up with it, man. It seems like every time I turn around, it's another big list. And for a guy that's not feeling really well, it's been difficult at times for me to keep up with. I'm just going to admit that. I'm very grateful for my staff. There are times they'll put in the group text, and I don't even respond. And then, like, Jacob Bain texts me. He's like, I just want to make sure you're feeling okay. You hadn't been in a group text today. And I'm like, yeah, just kind of dealing with something, right? And that's the thing you learn, man. You hear it when you're a kid, and it doesn't make a lot of sense to you. Like, you know, really appreciate and value your health. And even though I'm not truly sick, I got off my meds here, and I don't feel good. You know, I just don't. And I thought about some of that today, about what it would feel like to actually be sick, like to be suffering from illness, and having to bring myself up here every day and just kind of grind through it. And everything I've done the last 3 days has felt like a real grind. Like it hasn't been a situation where it just comes so naturally to me like it typically does. Usually I can sit down and type you out 600 words in about 10 minutes, and make it sound good. I wrote an article yesterday that normally takes me about 15, 20 minutes. It took me over an hour. It really did. It took me over an hour just to kind of lock in and focus and get it done. With this light beating in my eyes, like you keep leaning back, and next thing you know, you're invested in a time stealer and that sort of stuff. So hopefully we'll be back to 100% by Monday. And I think through this portal class, I hate to say it's winding down because I don't believe that it is. I think they're going to also wait and maybe save a spot or two to see what happens with some of these teams in the FBS championship game. We're going to talk a little bit about college football here shortly. And I'm going to change the format up just a little bit today because we got so much we got to talk about. So we're not going to have a top 10 list today, but we will have the ad read. But there's going to be some guys that will be added late that are going to be kind of back of the roster guys. What I mean by that is we're going to have some guys play special teams. We're going to have some guys on the scout team. We're going to have some guys that are kind of position flex for us that we could move around, right? And those guys you're not paying any money to. You're giving them scholarship books. You're giving them the traditional scholarship. They're not getting NIL. They're not getting rev share. And if they do, it's very, very, very small. And so those guys are always going to be there, right? You recruit them now and you talk to them, but you don't push because there may be something better just around the bend, but you keep those guys in play. So when Indiana or Miami has somebody go in late, and then all of a sudden you're like, well, hey, why did we take this kid instead of that kid? Well, some of it's because we got a budget. The kid from Miami may want $1 million, and then the kid that we sign as a back of the roster guy may fill a need that doesn't require that kind of price tag. It's important to understand. Not everybody that you sign out of the portal is getting big money. Not everybody that you lose to the portal is getting big money. And if you'll work through this and kind of trust me on that, you're going to find out there's a lot of people out there, and one of the reasons that they transfer is the search for NIL and rev share money. And I had somebody in the industry, a difference maker, a decision maker, said, you know what, Steve? If I was an agent, I would have all of my kids at least threaten to go into the portal every year. And I said, that's just crazy, man. He goes, nah, my job's to benefit my clients. He said, you're looking at it strictly from a school point of view. He goes, I'm trying to get the best deal for my client. And so, hey, we're going to go get in the portal. Well, then the school is going to be like, no, we can't afford to lose you. And so let's up the ante. Well, that's life. That's how it works. May not be ethical, but that's how the cow eats the cabbage. The next part of that is, there's a lot of guys out there, it's like, okay, I'll go give it a shot. I'll go prove myself. And then you get to your exit meeting and it's like, hey, I think I worked hard this year. Can I get some NIL money or rev share for next year? And they're like, hey, sorry, there's just not enough money to go around. Well, I'm going to go get in the portal. Because if Mississippi State's only giving me tuition, books, room and board, right, which is a lot, don't get me wrong, but if Mississippi State's not willing to invest an NIL or rev share dollar in me, I got to try to go somewhere that will, especially if I'm a reserve player. I'm already putting up all this work, right, and I'm not seeing the field much, and I'm not getting the money, so, right, I got to find a better situation for myself. And so even if I go get in the portal and somebody gives me $10,000 for a year, that's $10,000 I didn't have. And that's some NIL money and some living money and some pocket money that I can use to maybe take some of the burden off my parents. And so that's an aspect of this that I don't think a lot of people fully consider. And you'd say, you know what, and I'm going to tell you guys a story. I'm not going to tell you the kid. We had one last year. And I think I shared this with you. But anyway, we had a kid last year that we thought we were going to get. We weren't projecting it, but it was like down between us and a Big 12 school. And so I interviewed the kid. He was very open and honest. And people tell me I kind of have a disarming nature, but I was only on the phone with the kid for like 3-4 minutes. And so the fact that he would tell me this tells me how convicted he was in his belief about what was best for he and his family. And so he was deciding between Mississippi State and Central School. And I said, well, how are you going to break the tie? And he said, truthfully, it's going to be all about the money. And I said, well, what do you mean? And he said, yeah, I know that the SEC is probably the premier conference, but my dad is disabled and my mom just got diagnosed with cancer. And he said, I send my stipend check home to my family every month. So I've got to go sign the best NIL deal possible. I got to get as much money as I can because that's what's best for my family. Because my dad can't work, my mom's sick. So I got to make sure that my younger brothers have school clothes. And sometimes that's the intimate nature of this that we don't always get to fully appreciate. We don't understand that there are a lot of these young men that are having to send a lot of this money home. Like you find out about, hey, this guy signed with this school and he went out and bought a Rolls Royce, or he went out and, bought a Hellcat. And you know what? It's their money. They can do what they want to with it. I think some of us are a little bit jealous. But for a lot of those guys, they're driving a 20-year-old Honda Accord, sending back every dime they can to make sure their family can eat. That's an important thing to consider. It truly is. So the next time that a kid goes in the portal and you go run and say, oh, this kid's just being greedy, I want you to remember a lot of these kids out here are having to deal with very adult responsibilities. And they're using college and college football as a vehicle to get their education and to help support their families until they can get a real job and do it themselves. That's a lot for a young person to have to deal with. And so, of course, the young man did not go to Mississippi State. He told me he liked Mississippi State better, liked the campus better, but he had to do what was best for his family. We've heard that as a familiar refrain for many years, and typically that means that somebody dropped off a bag, right? Somebody bought a car, or somebody got a job. It's a little different to hear that vernacular when it's all legal. But, those situations are the exception rather than the rule. But that's why I think it's so important for us not to paint with such a huge brush and think that every young man that goes in the college football portal is doing so for the same reasons. All right, time for our Close with Blair Player of the Day, brought to you by Blair Chandler at closewithblair.com. His phone number is 601-500-2344, 601-500-2344. No matter if you're looking for your first home, your next home, or your retirement home, or perhaps that game day condo that could be so valuable to you, you know what? Blair is the kind of guy that can make that happen for you. Get his 25 years of know-how and expertise working for you. He is a bulldog through and through, rides the wave of emotion just like you, has a place here in town, a season ticket holder in multiple sports. But he doesn't limit his business just to bulldogs. If you're a fan of another program, feel free to hit up Blair Chandler. We've had several Boneyard listeners that have closed loans with Blair and had great success. We get rave reviews every single time. Let's close with Blair. So your player of the day. That's a good question, right? Well, we're going to go with Isaac Smith because Isaac Smith is coming back. And I don't think our fans maybe appreciate how difficult that was. Isaac Smith had people in his ear trying to encourage him, say, hey, you only got 1 year to get this right. Let's go win some ball games, maybe go to Vanderbilt, maybe go to LSU. Mississippi State had to work exceptionally hard to get Isaac Smith. But deep down, I know Isaac wanted to stay, and ultimately he did stay. That's a big, big deal for Mississippi State. Getting Kelly Jones and Isaac Smith back, really, that's the cornerstones of that secondary, right? Even though it's the star linebacker spot for Isaac. And it's basically the same thing he's always played. I mean, some people are like, oh, he's going to linebacker meetings. He's a linebacker. The star has always been a hybrid type positions. But with Isaac having a chance to meet with the safeties and then meet with the linebacker room over the course of his career, he's learned a lot more about football and has become even more valuable when getting everybody lined up. So Isaac Smith, your Close of Blair Player of the Day. We're going to take a look at the college football scoreboard in lieu of the top 10 list. So this segment's brought to you by Calido Guitars, Calido guitars.com. Very easy to remember, and a place you're going to want to do business. I've got plenty of merch from them in the time they've been with me. Got the Steve Vai signature guitar. I got a great guitar stand. I got a great gig bag. If you need those items or perhaps other accessories, strings, cables, anything you need to be a better guitar player, you can find at CalidoGuitars.com. And they are a company, too, that doesn't just specialize in the high heat, right? So if you're a brand new guitar player and you only got a few $100 to spend, they can take care of that. If you're somebody looking to upgrade and maybe go to an intermediate guitar, they can accommodate that too. And if you're a pro, or you think you are, you can get a Joe Satt or a Steve Vai. Basically anything you want, you can get from Calido Guitars. They don't just do guitars. They are a stringed instrument store based out of Lake Jackson, Texas. Be sure and check them out next time you're in that area just south of Houston. We've had people that have bought ukuleles and banjos and all sorts of items from them and given just incredible reviews about Daniel and the staff there, and they're Bulldogs through and through as well. Now, they're going to give you some incentive to do business with them. Promo code BSR, you know it well, right? That's going to get you a 10% discount off their already low price. And it's if that wasn't enough, no sales tax unless you live in the state of Texas, and free shipping. In addition to that, they're going to donate a 5% donation of your purchase price to the Bulldog Excellence Fund. So there you go, Calido Guitars. You shouldn't need a lot of incentive, but you got plenty. All right, let's take a look at kind of what's happened in college football since we've been together. There's one score in particular I know you guys are really excited about, and we'll talk about that a little bit. But, as I record this, man, it is apparent Indiana and Miami are going to play for a national championship. Now, tell me if you had that on your bingo card earlier in the year. I think not. What a blowout. Indiana over Oregon. Absolutely crazy. But what a game between Miami and Ole Miss. I mean, let's just kind of give the devil his due. And that's certainly Ole Miss, right? The devil. But anybody that kind of looks at this and says, hey, they got lucky. Hey, the schedule may not have been the most challenging, but they don't make the schedule, right? And you begin to kind of work through this and you kind of recognize the fact that they deserve a little respect. They got a gimme in week one of the playoffs against Tulane, a team they'd already played. And that's one of those things I think has to be corrected. I don't think you should have a rematch in the first round of the playoffs. Kind of like in college baseball where you don't get a rematch in the first round. The regional doesn't pair common opponents together. Everybody gets fresh opponents. That should be that way in the playoffs too. You shouldn't be able to carry over your scouting report from earlier in the year when everybody else in that round of playoffs is having to work hard to put a scouting report together. I think that's a flaw in the system. Ole Miss would have beat Tulane anyway, so this is not an Ole Miss thing. I think it's just a flaw in how we're doing the playoffs. But, Miami, you go back to the first round, man, what they did with A&M, and it was very much a defensive-minded game. They win it 10-3, and then they get Ohio State, and I think that's when everybody said, man, the Canes are for real. Well, they knock off Ole Miss, who has, in many respects, as much as we may not like it, kind of became America's team outside of the SEC. Because a lot of people know, this Lane Kiffin thing and how difficult it was on the kids and things like that. But, kind of looking back at this game, Ole Miss gets up early. And I guess I'm on the wrong box score here. Hate when I make a mistake like that. Hate it. It's not a live show. I could always go back and edit it out, but I'm human. I think maybe you appreciate that aspect of it, that we're not perfect. Miami gets up early 3-0. I immediately knew that was wrong. But then all of a sudden you get to the break, and it's a competitive game, man. It's 17-13 at the break. Ole Miss adds a field goal in the third, so it's 17-16 going to the fourth quarter. And as you guys know, Ole Miss put some put some things together late that scared a lot of people to death. And again, give that staff and that team a lot of credit. Even being a Bulldog, I think we can look at this and say, you know what? If they can do it, we can do it. And right now, they're doing it better than us. But they were down 24-19. They get the touchdown. They go for 2. They're up 3 with like 5 minutes to play. Is that right? 5 minutes? About 3 minutes to play. And then, what do you know? There were so many people talked about Carson Beck wasn't going to do anything at Miami. He wasn't worth the money. He's fleeing Georgia. Well, this is like the legacy drive right here, right? So they get first down incompletion, then there's an 8-yard pass. They run for the first down. It's an incompletion. And then they get the big 15-yard penalty. And like I'm not going to listen to any of this stuff about, a hand-fighting thing kind of misconstrued as pass interference. If you go back and look at the backside angle, the kid from Ole Miss pulled the guy from Miami's arm down. That's why it looks so awkward. But they're both trying to hand fight. That's football, guys. It's football. It never boils down to one play, no matter what everybody tells you. But in this situation here, Ole Miss gets flagged 15 yards on the face mask, and it's a 15-yard penalty that takes it across midfield right at the 2-minute warning. Right? A 2-minute timeout. We can't say 2-minute warning in college football due to copyright. But all of a sudden, here we are. Miami and Ole Miss territory. They get it out, 4 yards, throw an incompletion, move the chains again. Now it's $1:20 to go. Another incompletion. Now it's 3rd and 10. And if you're an Ole Miss fan, you're feeling it, right? You're thinking, man, 3rd and 10. We get a negative play here, this game is over. Well, they get it out to Marion, who gets loose for 17 yards. Now it's first down inside the Ole Miss 20 with just under 40 seconds to go. Beck gets hit for a loss, and then what do you know? On 2nd and 11, what does he do? Makes a pass out to Marion inside the Ole Miss 9 to make it 1st and goal. After 11-yard gain. 31 seconds to go, Ole Miss calls a timeout. And Miami decides to run the football. And they do. And remember, Ole Miss just leading by 3. And so Miami in a situation, hey, let's set the field goal up here, and then we'll take a shot. Doesn't work out. We can always kick the field goal and force overtime. But instead, after that 5-yard run that made it 2nd goal from the Ole Miss 3, it's Carson Beck who just kind of scrambles here. It wasn't a design play. People were acting like it was. You can tell. If you know anything about football, you can tell. And so Beck scores. Extra point makes it 31-27. Ole Miss gets the ball back with like 18 seconds to go. And that was the longest and most miserable 18 seconds of those kids' season, if not life. Chambliss takes a shot down the field. All of a sudden, it's a 23-yard gain out in their midfield, and you start thinking, we're a team of destiny. We're going to do this. Incomplete, then a 17-yard pass again. Now you're at the Miami 37, so you got a shot, right? You're right there with 6 seconds to go on the clock, and you know Trinidad Chambliss can get it there. Well, sure enough, that's what happens, and kind of actually overthrows it. That's one of the things that nobody talks about. I don't know that ball could have been caught in bounds, and maybe that was a factor in this thing too. I don't know how catchable that ball was. But, guys, on a Hail Mary situation, it is almost impossible to get a pass interference call. It is almost impossible. So, Ole Miss's dream season is over. Our national nightmare is over. But even for a guy like me, man, I got to tip the cap to those kids, right? I mean, you can say what you want to about the institution. You can say what you want to about Lane Kiffin. Everybody that I know that knows Pete Golding tells me what a great guy he is, and maybe he'll do things in a very ethical way there, which would be nice for a change. But, you can't hate on these kids. They had every opportunity to quit. They had every opportunity to go jump in the portal and say, hey, I don't want to do this, but they stuck together and they played hard, and they've got a lot to be proud of. But as many of you continue to post as if it's your own material, To root for Ole Miss just because they're from Mississippi is to root for the devil just because he's in the Bible. These two schools, State and Ole Miss, while there are some similarities among the fan bases, the institutions themselves could not be more different than they are. The value systems are much different. And listen, I think Chancellor Boyce and those guys are probably going to have like a much better situation up there. I don't think Boyce is going to be quite as arrogant as some of his predecessors. But the reality of it is, Ole Miss has a great season. We'll see what happens next year. Schedule's going to be a lot more difficult. In the news today, Trinidad Chambliss has been denied a waiver for a 6th year of eligibility. Along those lines, Brennan Smith, of course, was going to have to go litigate. He is elected to just declare for the draft, so that appears to be over. So, we'll see how things kind of play out. But the reality of it is my honest opinion is it's the right decision. You can't play forever. Especially since they've tied NIL compensation to this, because the money that you're eating up, there's about 10 young guys that maybe are sending money back to their families that could use that money, right? Those young freshmen and sophomores, because you don't invest a lot in those guys. So that's the thing you think about, right? The NIL package, the rev share, all that kind of stuff. And I know you want to get back. You're thinking, man, if we can just get back and we keep Kewan Lacey and, keep Chambliss together, we've got pieces. But, Tom Mars is involved, and I'm sure there'll be some kangaroo court with some Ole Miss judge that'll grant some TRO, and they'll stretch this thing out. But if I'm Trinidad Chambliss, and I don't say this just from a Mississippi State point of view, I say this as a fan of college football. And I'm no fan of Trinidad Chambliss. I don't like what he had to say after that Jersey thing. That had nothing to do with Mississippi State as an institution. I think those comments were absolute horse hockey. But this young man's NFL draft stock will never be higher than it is right now. Never. And it's a pretty weak draft for quarterbacks. He could be the second or third quarterback taken in this draft. And so if I'm advising him, I'm saying, dude, you got to turn pro here. There's no sense fighting this, and then all of a sudden you get down to the month of August and they deny you anyway. And then where are you left? Well, now you can't get drafted and you can't go get on the field. It could be a real interesting state of limbo for a guy like him. So, the best thing for him to do is to just go ahead and turn pro. And I'm sure everything will be fine. Somebody will take him. He'll make some money, and they'll move on. But I know Ole Miss obviously wants to keep him, and we would feel the same way. But again, tip of the cap to Ole Miss. We don't like you, but we do respect the fact that these kids hung together and played really hard and did some great things for your university. And we're going to do our best to kind of follow in those footsteps and maybe take it beyond that. Because, we were the first in this state to win a national championship in football in baseball. And those national championships you guys claim, we're not shooting for the Xavier Telegraph Pole or Better Homes and Gardens. All right, nice segment of the show brought to you by Campus Bookmart, a Starkvillian institution. Man, we love Campus Bookmart, and why? Because they got the stuff we want, right? We want more Mississippi State merch. We want more Mississippi State decorative items. We want people to know when they walk into our home or office that we are Mississippi State people. You can find all those identifying marks at Campus Bookmart. Stop by and see them the next time you're in town. Go by and see their smiling faces. If you can't make it to town, or perhaps game day is a difficult shopping day for you, visit them on the World Wide Web, courtesy of Al Gore's internet at campusbookmart.net. By being a loyal Boneyard listener, we'll give you a phrase that pays, and that is BSR, which stands for Beautiful Steve Robertson. That gets you free shipping on all orders over $75. Any order less than $75, absolutely incomplete. It's never too early to start thinking about those diploma frames either. Take advantage of their expansive selection and get a timeless gift for all the Mississippi State grads in your life. All right. Let's talk a little basketball. We'll start with the Mississippi State men. And I think it's important to kind of praise the fact that this team's kind of righted the ship. There was a stretch there where we could never take anything for granted. I think if we're honest with ourselves, we're all like, oh my gosh, please don't lose, please don't lose. And now we've kind of reached a point where it feels like we should expect to win. Yeah, and we knew the kind of coach we had. We knew at some point Chris Jans and his staff would kind of figure out who they could trust, what the rotation should be. And you know what? We're going to have to make some other changes at some point. We'll have to evolve as other SEC teams kind of figure some things out for us, and I've got confidence that Coach Jans will do that. But guys, we were 4-5 and have now won 6 in a row. Bulldogs now 10-5 overall and 2-0 in Southeastern Conference play. And again, this year we knew we didn't get, that murderer's row to start SEC play. But we're now 7-1 at the hump. Yeah, how about that, right? There was a time that we went through Humphrey Coliseum schedule, and it was a very difficult place for people to play. But we're kind of getting back there. Of course, the lone loss was to SMU. And then we had that big turning point win on the road at Utah when Hub wasn't quite 100%. And, man, we haven't lost since. Big win at Texas, and then you come home and you take care of Oklahoma. And, guys, this game was not competitive. I thought we'd win. I didn't think that we'd win the way we won. That second half was an absolute clinic for Mississippi State. It's 27-27 at the break, and then State gets them by 19 points in the second half. When you're outscoring your opponents by 20 or so in the second half, you got a good chance to win. And the Bulldogs do just that. They win 72-53. Great result for the Bulldogs. Held Oklahoma to 31% shooting and just 15% beyond the arc. Just 15%. They were 3 of 20. And that's what happens when you begin to get separation. People have to take a shot with a higher degree of difficulty. It makes it easier to defend. They weren't great. The free throw line shot to 64%. But you get to the Bulldog side of things. Josh being Josh, 30 points for him in 37 minutes. And we talked about we needed Bauer to pick it up a little bit. Saw a little bit from him. 10 points, 4 boards, in just 15 minutes rather than a rule. Epps, since he got over the little ailment he had earlier in the year, he has been a very consistent second scorer for us. Just didn't have it this time. Played 21 minutes, 2 of 7 from the floor. Had 4 turnovers, too, and that probably played a big role in his minutes, right? Achor started 33 minutes, didn't make a basket, guys, but pitched in 4 points from the free throw line. Sean Jones, just a couple points too. But the Bulldog bench kind of stepping up. Jabari McGee with 10 points in the ball game. And then King Kong is coming. Jamarion Davis-Fleming. Yeah, 8 points, 10 boards. Got in some foul trouble, ready to play a little bit more. You're kind of starting to see Jamarion Davis-Fleming kind of eat into some of these Quincy Ballard minutes. And competition's good for everybody. All right, Bulldogs shoot at 42%, and not a great night from beyond the arc for the Bulldogs either. Just 2 of 15 for 13%. State a little bit better at the free throw line, too. 20 of 28 for 71%. State with 20 points off the bench, 36 points in the paint, 14 points off turnovers, 19 second chance points, 7 on the break. The game was tied 7 different times. The lead changed hands 11 times. But in the second half, it's all Bulldogs. And, you kind of go back and start thinking about, like, those decisive runs, because everybody makes a run at some point. Everybody makes a run, especially in this league. You just kind of get to a point, you say, you know what? The last 10 minutes of this game are going to be an absolute war. And they were. And it wasn't like State just came out of the locker room just like bombing threes and pulling away. Guys, it was 39-38 in favor of State with 14 minutes left in the game. And then you get down to right around the 12-minute mark. Things get a little bit wild for a while, but you get under 12 and State's up 6. 45-39. So again, you think about what those final 10 minutes look like, and that's when State played their best basketball. When the game was on the line, the Bulldogs were at their best. So, big win, for sure. Big win for the Bulldogs. And now we look ahead, heading to Kentucky on Saturday. I don't know if you've kept up with Kentucky this year, but they had some really, really, really difficult non-conference losses early on. I think that's fair to say. And a lot of people are like, you know what, Mark Pope's not going to be able to get it done here. And you know what? Maybe he won't. I can't make that call, but I can tell you, at Kentucky, you don't get to lose for long. Not how life works up there. Wildcats are now 9-6. They've lost 2 straight. We'll kind of break it down for you here real quickly. So they get Nicholls State early on. They get Valparaiso. They go to Louisville and lose there 96-88, the big rivalry game over there in the KFC Yum Center. They bounce back and they get Eastern Illinois, and then they get pounded by Michigan State in MSG, 83-66. They get Loyola. They basically double up Tennessee Tech, win that game 104-54. And then they host North Carolina. They drop that game too. Then they got absolutely embarrassed in Bridgestone Arena. Gonzaga gets them 94-59, and that's when all the Bluebirds and Boo Birds united in one chorus saying this is not going to work. Well, they get NC Central, and then Indiana comes in. They get those guys. Indiana maybe not as great as they have been. They get them 72-60. They get St. John's, which is kind of an ESPN Classic game. And for those of you that were around when ESPN started, you know what I'm talking about. 78-66. Then they get Bellarmine to close out non-conference play. Well, they've opened up SEC play with back-to-back losses. They lose at Alabama 89-74. No shame in that, but if you're Kentucky, you feel like you should win those games. And then they lose at home by 5 to Missouri, who may prove to be a better team than we thought. So tomorrow night, 8:30, SEC Network. Could be a big, big game. Mississippi State wins that game, and it really sets up what, at some point Kentucky's going to get their act together, or at least you feel like they will. That could be an RPI or a net climbing opportunity for us. So let's kind of look inside the numbers here to kind of get you ready, man. That's the reason you listen to this show. It's not just to listen to the soulful sounds of your good friend and host. Kentucky averaging 83 points a game, only allowing 69. So you look at that and say, man, some of those losses had to be gaudy, and they were. But they're outscoring teams by just over 13 points a game, shooting about 47% and 33% from beyond the arc. And, maybe it's not the Kentucky of old. The Kentucky, like you think about the Tony Delkiers and things like that, it felt like everybody on that team could spot up and bomb a 3 on you in a big moment and quiet a crowd. 74% from the line. They're out-rebounding opponents by 6.5. And I think that may be where this game is determined. We've got to get in there and really get on that glass, especially on the offensive end. Can't give them second chance points either. But this is where I think you need Fleming to do good, right? They're handing out 17.5 assists a game. That's about right. Kentucky's always been a team basketball team. It's not a lot of pickup type stuff. They run a lot of complicated sets at times to get the matchups that they're advantageous to them. Turnovers hadn't been a huge problem for them, but they're not forcing a lot of turnovers either. Kentucky turning it over 10.5 a game. Their opponents, it's 11.7. So the difference is, just under 2. So it's negligible in many respects. Just 112 steals, 7.5 a game. But you know what? They've had 7 stolen against them. 69 blocks. Nice. That's almost 4. That's a little over 4.5 a game. So that's how the team numbers break down. We'll look at some individual numbers here, and we'll get to the ladies. But, like you'd expect with Tennessee, or most probably with Kentucky, there's going to be a lot of talented players here, right? There's going to be a lot of players here that do a great job. And it's going to be one of those scenarios where Mississippi State is going to have to probably play our best game of the year, not just because it's Kentucky, but because it's Kentucky. You know what I'm saying? Not so much this Kentucky team. It's the logo. It's the reverence that the officials sometimes defer to them, right? It's like Alabama in football. You go to try to beat Kentucky in Lexington, you almost got to be 15, 20 points better. All right, so Otega Awe, 15.1 points a game. Diabate with 11.2, Aberdeen with 11. So pretty balanced in that respect. And that runs kind of throughout the team. Lowe with 9 points a game, Marino with 8.7, Chandler with 8.2. So they've got a lot of people that can hurt you And again, the three-point percentage doesn't just jump off the page at you, but it is a big part of their offense. 375 three-point basket attempts this year. And again, you think about the teams they played and blew out. Those teams had to kind of try to catch up with the three ball as well. It just didn't work out quite as well. But the best three-point shooter on this team, maybe Chandler, 25 of 63. He's shooting right at 40%. Aberdeen shoots it a lot. Leads the team second on the team with 55. Chandler's a guy, again, you're going to have to kind of account for in the half-court set. But, yeah, we're going to need a great effort. I know Chris Jans and the Bulldogs are up for this, and they should be. Bulldogs playing well. All the pressure's on Kentucky. And, again, there's some officials out there that'll certainly try to bail them out. We can't help them. We got to maintain our composure. And, again, probably going to need a double-digit lead down the stretch to kind of make it easier for the officials to swallow their whistles a little bit. Because you know as well as I do, if this is like a 3 or 4 point game in the last 2 minutes, we're not getting a call. They're going to get some. We're not going to get any. And so that's where we are with the men's side. And women's side, not quite as well. The men's winning streak is still going. Not so much for the ladies, but men have won 6. And now, we flip over to the women's side here, and I still think this is a good team. I really do. I still think this is a good team. Are they a great team? No, I'm not going to go that far. Are they a tournament team? Absolutely. Can they make a little noise in the tournament? Yes. Yes, they can. And so, again, we had that debacle against Oklahoma, as you guys are well aware. And then we had Tennessee come to the hump. And the Bulldogs lose it by 10. It was a competitive game. We're not here to play it close. We're here to win ball games. And that's an expectation that needs to be prevalent throughout our athletic department. We are not just there for a show and to show how much we've improved. We are there to win ball games. Tennessee now 3-0 in the Southeastern Conference as your Bulldogs drop to 1-2. And again, Tennessee wins it by 10. Vols came out hot and had a 7-point lead after one. They expanded it to an 11-point lead at the break. Tighter second quarter, 23-22 in favor of the Vols, and the Bulldogs get the 21-20, but the edge is kind of off there, right? Tennessee wins 3 of the 4 quarters, and then you win the final one by 1. It makes it difficult to catch up in those circumstances. And, State down by 7 in this game with 9 minutes to play. So it's not like it was out of reach. State just simply could not get over the hump. They just simply could not do it. And cut it to 5, and then immediately it goes right back out to 7. Then it's out to 9. And so it was like every time State made a run, Tennessee matched it, and that's evidenced by the fourth quarter score. But it's behind us now. We knew that these first 3 weeks in SEC play were going to be a real challenge. So now the ladies will head to Oxford on Sunday, January 11th, 5 p.m. We will have full in-person coverage from the game. If you're in the greater Oxford area, God bless you. But you should be able to get up there and get a ticket and go support the Bulldogs. There was a time that Mississippi State took over that arena, and the Ole Miss administration did what they could to kind of prevent that moving forward, like had everybody go sit behind a curtain or some crazy stuff like that. Hey, you can't sit by each other, and you can always sit in the upper deck. It's a rivalry game, and they've had the better of it the last couple of years. We've gotten some wins every now and again, but this is another good Ole Miss team. They're 15-3 right now. So real quickly, we'll run through it. They get Norfolk State, Alabama, A&M, Southern, Memphis. So not exactly world beaters, and then they follow that up with Longwood. So 5-0 as they go to the Coast to Coast Classic. They take down Wisconsin by 9, and they get George Mason by 14. So they win that deal. They get into the ACC SEC Challenge, and that's against Notre Dame, a quality opponent. They get that game in Oxford by 7. Then they play in the Bill Snyder Classic. They lose to Kansas State by 1. Bounce back to get Wofford and South Carolina State, Mississippi Valley State, Old Dominion. They lose to Michigan State. And so then there's Alcorn State. And so for those of you that have been hypercritical of Mississippi State's non-conference schedule on the women's side, I want you to go back and look who Ole Miss played. I just rattled them off to you. So please, some respect on Mississippi State, because that schedule is really no better than what Mississippi State put out there. I give them credit for the Notre Dame win, and then, of course, they get shelled by Michigan State. That wasn't a great non-conference schedule either. So don't listen to any of that stuff. All right, the Rebels get Georgia 79-62 and then go down and give Vic Schaefer and the Longhorns all they want. Texas wins it by 3, 67-64. They bounce back and they go to Norman, Oklahoma, a team that just destroyed Mississippi State, and they win that game 74-69. And now they welcome the Bulldogs into the Pavilion. We'll take a look at the numbers here, and we're going to play well. I mean, there's no question about it. We're going to have to go up there and play well. They're certainly not going to give it to us. And Coach Yo obviously has made this game matter to her fan base, and she talks a little trash. And, I don't have some of the stuff she says is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, somebody needs to get a microphone from her. But I don't have a problem with her placing a premium on this game to unite her fan base. But she's always talking about we need more money. Coach Yo, it's not going to happen. The money is going to go to football. That's how it's going to be. And the money that does go to basketball is going to men's basketball. That's just how it is. And you could say, well, Steve, it shouldn't be that way. Well, we live in a capitalist society, and that's how it's going to work. Until the court system says that they've got to change the distribution of rev share, which they shouldn't and they won't, this is how it's going to be. All right, Coach McMahon leads this team in many respects. 19.1 points, and if you look at most of the offensive statistical categories, McMahon's name at or near the top. Christina Awoyu, she started 17 games for him this year, 14.3 points. Latasha Lattimore with 10. And from there's only 3 double-digit scores, but it's fairly balanced through the regulars the rest of the way. And, of course, former Bulldog Denham DeShields up there, averaging 3.8 points a game. Yeah. Started 6, played in all 18 games. It hadn't gone great. It hasn't gone great. And I don't know everybody's feelings about that, but it kind of is what it is. It just is what it is. Lady Rebels averaging 78 points a game, giving up 54. And again, you look at the quality of competition at non-conference schedule, it makes sense. They'd have a plus 24 in the scoring margin column, shooting 44%, allowing 38. And again, give Ole Miss credit. I mean, you go down to Texas. Again, we're not here to play it close, but they went down to Texas and played a good game. Shooting 27% from beyond the arc, giving up a little bit more at 28.5%. Good free throw shooting, and that's typically the case in women's basketball. 72.5%, and right at 70% for their opponents. And again, you know the quality of the non-conference schedule. Rebounding, they're out-rebounding teams by 10 a game. And this is where I think Mississippi State may have an advantage here that maybe perhaps Ole Miss hasn't seen as much. Obviously, Texas is going to get on the glass. But I think State could match up in the post. I don't know how we match up in the backcourt. I think we can match up in the post a little bit. And so I think that rebounding number is going to be a lot closer to even. On the assist side, they dish it out 15 times a game, allowed just 9. And they do turn it over a little bit, but, man, they force a ton of turnovers. They turn it over 14.1 times per game. They force over 21 turnovers a game. So plus 7 turnovers. That'll get it done. It will. They're averaging 23 points a game off turnovers, and only allowing 10 points a game off turnovers. So they're going to press. They're going to be handsy. They're going to try to get that ball out. They have 164 steals as a team. It's over 9 a game. And they will put their hands up and play a little defense. 93 blocks on the year, so that's a little over 5 a game. So it's going to be a good Ole Miss team. It is. And, again, we're going to probably have to bring our best effort of the year so far to win this game. So we hope that we are victorious. So you got some basketball to look forward to. The Mississippi State men against Kentucky. Saturday night, and then Sunday evening, Mississippi State ladies on the road at Ole Miss. All right, final segment of the show brought to you by the Stark Vegas Clubhouse, the best place to stay in the Golden Triangle, bar none, if you're bringing a large group to town, and you should. We've done it. We live here, but man, we kind of had a staycation and went and rented out the Stark Vegas Clubhouse. We had a ball, man. We did. It's so nice there. And one of the best things about it is, too, there's plenty of place for everybody to kind of spread out if you need to, but plenty of room for everybody to congregate. You don't always have that. You get hotel rooms and you got to go find somewhere for everybody to sit. It's loud, right? It's crowded. It's just not conducive for good family time, right? I mean, it's not to say you shouldn't go out. You should. But when you're just trying to spend time with the people you love the most, you need a little peace and quiet. You can find it at the Stark Vegas Clubhouse. Out off 182 out past the Highlands, the old renovated Country Club Clubhouse, just 5 minutes away from the Mississippi State campus. Google the Stark Vegas Clubhouse. When you do, their Facebook page will pop up for you. You can peruse all the pictures available, of all the amenities available to you and your guests, if I can get it out. Plenty of parking, full-service kitchen, wet bar, back porch area, fire pit area, which means a little more this time of year, right? Whether you come to town for a baseball weekend or maybe a midweek doubleheader on the basketball side, or maybe you're bringing a large work group to town, and rather than have everybody scattered all over tarnation, just keep everybody under one roof. After that Google search, you'll find some booking options, Airbnb, VRBO. You can go that route if you want to, but if you want to save some money, book through the Evolve website and use promo code BSR10. That's right, BSR10. Get you 10% off your stay at the premier place to stay in the Golden Triangle. All right, we're going to wrap up a little early tonight actually. It's been, again, kind of a challenging week, but man, I wish you all the very best this weekend. Let's root for the Bulldogs to get a couple of big wins. It's going to be tough, but, there's a reason we play the games. But I love each and every one of you. I say that to you all the time, and it's so funny. I mentioned one day about how Ozzy Osbourne, when he said I love you all, that he meant it. I mean it too. And I had somebody message me and said, Steve, you're like the only person that tells me you love me all the time. And I'm just doing it here on the show. And so my hope is you can spread as much love as you possibly can. There's enough hatred in the world already, so we don't need to apply for those positions. I think it's important for us, even when we don't agree, to approach everything out of love. Love is the only thing that gets you anywhere. And I met a young man earlier this week, really struggling with some things. And I told him, I said, man, I love you. He goes, you don't even know me. He goes, I know you. I may not know your name. I may not know your story, but you're my brother. And I want good things to happen in your life. And I could tell it meant a lot to him. And it's not to praise me. It's to basically emphasize the importance of us spreading goodness and kindness and kind of loving people where they are. I was once that person that, I felt unlovable. There are a lot of people walking around today, especially with all this social media criticism. It's just like we talked about with Luke Work. Man, Luke Work didn't do anything but play hard for us, and he gets criticized and made the butt of a joke. I mean, there's no love in that at all. And so I love Luke. I love that whole family, and I wish him the best at Missouri. Just not against us. I hope he has a great game and a loss. But the reality of it is love shouldn't be conditional and that sort of stuff. When you really love people, you want their journey to be one that is complete and very satisfactory. And guys, I've made so many mistakes in life, and I'd love to say that I made them all before I got clean and sober. That's just not true, and I continue to make them. But I pray for guidance each day, and I pray for each and every one of you. But until next time, let's all live our lives in a way we make more friends than enemies, and people can see a difference in the way we live.